Good evening, my name is Jorge Blanco, and today I will be presenting a discussion on the soccer goalkeeper Guillermo Memo Ochoa and his career in the soccer leagues. And the primary pretty much topic of discussion for this is to talk about his career as a whole, as well as discussing his dilemma and scandal that he faced in the early 2000s among rumors of steroid use. So the primary focus on this is to go ahead and highlight the effects, outcomes, and impacts that performance-enhancing drugs pretty much has on professional athletes, not only in their overall performance, but in their overall career, and how it may end up impacting them later on along the lines. And the title of my presentation is Becoming the Best, a Struggle to Remain at the Top. This is pretty much synonymous with many, not only soccer players, but professional athletes in general. Now, there is a quote at the bottom of the page, and it does say, I'm not just a brick, I'm the whole wall. This is a quote from Guillermo Ochoa, and it pretty much highlights how his career was constructed on the basis that he was a well-loved, well-appreciated, and overall great athlete in the sport of soccer, and was recognized as one of the best goalkeepers for his generation. Now, in order to make the discussion a little bit easier, I've planned to pretty much go ahead and focus on 4 primary topics of discussion. We will go ahead and introduce the discussion by discussing the early life and career of Memo Ochoa, discussing how he initially began, his career in terms of how he originally got signed onto teams, and the opportunities that he was given. Additionally, we'll go ahead and address the athletic phenomena which Memo Ochoa was known for, including some myths and legends that eventually became rumored and developed of him later on throughout his career. Another topic point that we will go ahead and hit will be on the temptation and success that he faced throughout his career, in particular throughout the use of performance enhancement drugs, and his temptation to use them in order to achieve great success. But we will also discuss the impact that it had in his career during the scandal that he faced after having been identified as one of the players who was using the drugs. And finally, we'll go ahead and discuss the impact on a legacy, that being the impact that this decision, which Guillermo Ochoa chose to take during his career, and we'll go ahead and discuss the impact that it had on his career from that point on, and the pretty much mark that it left on his legacy overall. So in order to get a better understanding of the topic at hand, we must first get to know our subject at hand. So the question still we would be asking ourselves at this point is, who is Guillermo Ochoa? Now, Guillermo, also known as Memo Ochoa, has a full name of Francisco Guillermo Ochoa Magaña. And the young soccer player was actually born in Mexico, Guadalajara, and he, at a young age, was actually sent off by his father to join a private academy referred to as the Capital Club Football Academy, in order to go ahead and basically train him and mold him into becoming the great soccer player that he is today. As his career would go ahead and take off slowly, he would start to gain the attention of many premier and elite soccer clubs, eventually getting signed on to join Club America, which would be the first soccer club in general that he would join, and would pretty much start off his professional career as a soccer player. But as his career started to progress, as early as the age of 22, he started getting much attention from other very prestigious soccer clubs, including that of Manchester United and Arsenal. As his pretty much progress as a goalkeeper for Club America continued, all eyes were on him, and he seemed to be one of the best up-and-coming athletes within the league itself, to the point where he was even nominated as being one of the top 50 for the Golden Soccer Player Cup. everybody was able to acknowledge that Guillermo Ochoa was indeed, and as a matter of fact, a great goalkeeper. So much so that myths and rumors started to expulge about him, claiming that he had a six finger on each of his hands, so that's why he was able to actually catch all of these balls and able to detain any of them from any other of the other teams from scoring goals on him. There were also rumors that he was over 6 foot tall, and had a extended wingspan because of his height, and that's why he was able to reach all the way across the goalpost in order to capture as many of the potential goals that he did. So it's just kind of funny to think that even though he was still young and ripe in his age, there were already all of these myths and legends starting to form of him that he was hearing as his career was continuing on, rather than hearing after his career had already finished. Now, unfortunately, he did face a situation that many other athletes eventually face throughout their careers, and that is the dilemma of having faced a scandal. Now, for Memo Ochoa, the scandal in particular that he faced was one of performance-enhancing drug use, which ultimately led to scandal within his team, within his career, and led to missed opportunities and had very negative impacts overall. Not necessarily to say on his performance, because he was not allowed to perform on those enhancement drugs, but overall on his career and his opportunities that he was so graciously given prior to his use of the steroids. Fortunately, we will see later on that he is given second opportunities, and the pretty much advantages that he gets later on after recognition of his failures and his faults, and being able to turn around his life in order to go ahead and try and remain as natural as he possibly could, in order to stay dedicated to the sport that he loves and wishes to participate in. Now, as we continue on and discussing Guillermo Ochoa, we must of course discuss his phenomenal athleticism. So he himself is a phenomenal goalkeeper, and his athleticism in all has not gone without any recognition. Of course, throughout his career, he's actually received 4 Golden Cups, 1 Belgian Cup, 1 Mexican Champions Cup, and 1 CONCACAF Championship Cup. These are all great recognitions for not only him in his team, but him as a soccer player, in particular goalkeeper, because it identifies that he truly has the potential, ability to be among those in the Hall of Fame. And so because of his commitment and his drive to his pretty much passion of soccer, he has been able to obtain much recognition, much fame, and much attention from fans and other soccer clubs alike. Now, as his career also continued, we were already aware that he had initially been signed on to Club America. However, he was also given the opportunity to participate alongside the Mexico national football team in their participation of the World Cup. And this opportunity actually put him more so on the map, not only for the acknowledgement of other prestigious clubs that were looking into him, but also in order to gain a much bigger fan following, which if you were to go to Mexico nowadays, you'd pretty much note that he is one of the biggest, I guess you could call him, brand advertisements that is used. He has a tendency to be on like potato chips or even promoting like energy drinks in Mexico. I go every now and then to visit family, and it's still stunning to think that this athlete who I grew up watching since I was in middle school, and now I'm in college, and to this day he's still recognized as such a great athlete, to the point where they're still willing to use him to promote, and advertise, that if you were to take this product or this product, you too could be like Guillermo Ochoa, which there in and of itself lies an issue that I wanted to present early on in order to come back to it a little bit later on in this discussion. But it is primarily to highlight the idea of influence that athletes or professionals in any profession in general have over their audiences. In this case, it would have been Guillermo Ochoa over his soccer fanatic audience that he had, and the influence and impact that he had over them. Ochoa's statistics overall show that he had a total of 122 total catches as of current within his career. And we are aware that his primary strength lays in his penalties. However, he does have a slight weakness in his ability to block cross shots. Not to say that he doesn't block a large majority of them. Unfortunately, he does let a couple slip by on occasion. However, he is still able to block the large majority of all his cross shots in general. Now, coming back to that point of influence that these athletes have over their audiences because of overall their position that they have, we can go ahead and discuss the idea of balancing temptations and success in the career of Memo Ochoa. Now, in order to continue on, we must initially address the scandals that Memo Ochoa faced early on in his career. In 2011, Memo Ochoa was a member of the Mexico National League soccer or slash football team, where he participated as the primary goalkeeper for the team. During this time, he actually faced a very big scandal, one that would ultimately affect the outcome of where his career would go, and one that he himself has stated that he reflects on and ultimately regrets. I remember the media coverage for this event during the scandal was very heavy, and I remember there being 4 other soccer players on Team Mexico at the time who also tested positive for the use of steroids. However, I remember as a kid, the only one that ever stuck out to me, and the way that I remember it was that they only said his name. And I still remember to this day listening to the radio on my way to school with my grandpa, where I overhear the radio broadcaster discussing about the scandal of Guillermo Ochoa having tested positive for steroids. And at that moment, I genuinely didn't know what to think. It was a situation that left me kind of shocked and surprised, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it because my favorite athlete at that time was using steroids. And unfortunately, it's a bittersweet feeling, because it's a person that I admire and I genuinely look up to. But it was also a person who I, wasn't sure how to feel towards because of the fact that they were using steroids. And, and steroids have such a negative connotation towards them that I wasn't really sure how to take it. He himself, as a public figure, had much influence over his fans. He had a very large fan base and audience. Me personally, speaking from experience, because I too was a fan, can actually attest to the fact that it was a controversy that at the time I genuinely didn't know how to take it, and I genuinely didn't know what to think of the situation at hand. So it was a difficult dilemma, and it was a question of influence where you have to think. We see brands and advertisements publicizing athletes all the time and promoting their products to say that, hey, if you take this product, you can be like him. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, do I need to take steroids in order to be just as good as Memo, if not better? And this was a dilemma that I did face in middle school. And it's crazy to think that I ever thought that now that I'm in my early 20s. But at the time, being an impressionable young athlete, being an impressionable young soccer player, it really did heavily impact my overall performance and my overall, attitude towards the sport. Now, unfortunately, after this scandal broke out, Memo Ochoa was actually ejected from his position as the goalkeeper for the Mexican national soccer team. And at this point, it pretty much led to the very beginning of a spiral downwards for Memo's career during this period for himself. Because of the scandal, which often journalists tend to refer to as a doping scandal. The rumors that Guillermo Ochoa was supposed to be signing on to Paris's Saint Germain soccer club ultimately disbanded after the fact that the doping scandal became public, and the team that was supposed to contract him no longer wanted to associate with him because of the scandal itself. Because of this, he lost the opportunity to join a European team, which he actually had stated in multiple interviews was actually one of his dreams, to eventually be able to join a European team. And in a direct quote from Memo Ochoa, he stated, "I was going to sign for PSG. At the end of 2010, I very nearly signed for Premier League side Fulham. I even went to London." The fact that Memo was putting in the effort to go out to these European leagues in order to meet with them is insane. To think that he had this opportunity, and because of one poor decision, he ultimately lost all of these opportunities that he was given. Unfortunately, it did lead to him being ejected from his position as goalkeeper for Team Mexico, and he was actually banned from participating in any professional soccer league for 2 years. Eventually, his actions would be exonerated, and he would be given the opportunity to return back to the leagues. But his long-awaited opportunity to move over into the European leagues unfortunately did get deterred once again, making his wait to transition over far longer than he had initially hoped for, and far longer than what he was presented with. This scandal, which ultimately led to Ochoa's ejection, would also lead to PSG signing Nicolas Duches from Menez instead of Ochoa, and Mexico replacing Ochoa with Ajaccio for a total of a 3-year contract. This ultimately can highlight the impact that the use of steroids had on Memo Ochoa's total career. Obviously, a very negative one, and obviously one that ultimately took him down a path where he lost very many opportunities, and one that ultimately highlights the negative impacts and negative influences that steroids can have overall on any professional athlete's career. Now, after the dilemma that occurred between Memo Ochoa, his team, potential contracts, and in general the media and his fan base, it pretty much led everybody to question, where do we go from here? In particular, to question, where does Memo go from here? Now, overall, his use of performance-enhancing drugs, although his initial reaction to taking them was potentially that it wasn't hurting anybody, and so long as nobody knew, nobody would have any problem with it. Unfortunately, that did not go the way that he probably anticipated. Perhaps he didn't even anticipate to be tested for any performance-enhancing drugs, as prior to his loss of contract with PSG, his lawyer had already advised him, or manager had already advised him, that his contract was pretty much set, and it was just a matter of him signing on for him to go ahead and join onto the team. But it was because of the fact that he tested for these performance-enhancing steroids that it led to them redacting their contract altogether. Now, because he did take involvement with the use of steroids while in a professional sport, it did have a very negative impact on his career, in terms of he did begin to lack progress. Now, he did have to go, I believe it was about 2 years without without participating in any professional soccer team. So he did have to go without a certain period of time without being a professional goalkeeper. And this ultimately affected where he stood in his career, obviously in a negative manner. His lack of progress pretty much can be highlighted by the fact that he would eventually be exonerated for the act that he committed in, which is taking steroids, but it led him to go back to Club America. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Overall, it regardless of the situation at hand, he was given the opportunity to remain playing for a professional league, which, not many people get that opportunity, especially after a scandal such as the one that he faced. But to this day, he still remains on that team. And this incident, this scandal occurred back in 2011, and we are now in 2022. That's 11 years later, and he still remains with the same team. Still not given the opportunity to travel to the European leagues and teams as he had originally wished to. He still, to this day, regrets the opportunities that he missed, as they had originally, granted him these opportunities at a younger age prior to the scandal. But once the scandal took place, he definitely was not going anywhere for quite some time. Because of this, I would highly identify this as being a very much large lack of progress, because he started off with this team and eventually it became full circle, and he ended up back with this team, and to this day he still remains with them. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, because he is signed and contracted with a professional league. However, he has not made any progress towards his ultimate goals, which that would have been to join any EU teams and leagues. Now, for some closing thoughts, again, I just want to address the fact that I myself was a very big fan of Memo Ochoa, especially early on as a middle schooler. Me participating as a goalkeeper for local leagues, and I always looked up to Guillermo Memo Ochoa. And I think majority of the people that I knew looked up to him, even if they weren't goalkeepers, even if they were defenders, strikers, attackers, of whatever position that they played, they admired Guillermo Memo Ochoa. His ability on the field was well recognized by everybody, and you can attribute it to his total fan base, and you can attribute it to the amount of awards and medals he's received over the years. And he is to this day acknowledged as one of the best goalkeepers to date for his generation. But the fact of the matter still remains that because of this incident where tested positive for having used performance-enhancing drugs, it led him towards a downhill spiral, which ultimately affected his career and ultimately impacted his influence over his fandom. Like I stated earlier on, myself, I had always looked up to Guillermo Ochoa, and upon hearing news of the scandal, it led me to start questioning where I stood as a non-professional athlete. Me in middle school, eventually planning on going on to doing soccer in high school, and potentially even doing so in college. And it was an opportunity that I looked forward to. But hearing scandals like that sort of rocked my entire perspective, because I, in the back of my head, always tell myself, like, no, this guy can't do that, because look at him, look how good he is. Why would he need to do that? It's a dilemma that many fans face, and unfortunately have a tendency to not really know what to do with that information once they're given. And that is the fan dilemma that I faced here. Not to say that he was necessarily a bad person, because don't get me wrong, he's still such a great person. If you see any of his interviews, if you see any of his interactions with fans, the way that he is, he's genuinely an overall great person. But it still stands to question his character, and to this day, I can tell you that, yeah, I'm still a fan of him. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that he did hold a influence over people like myself, young athletes looking forward to possibly potential careers, or professional or semi-professional or even non-professional. This incident, this pretty much play-by-play of Guillermo Memo Ochoa's life, highlights the highs and the sort of lows in a professional athlete's careers that they face as they go on through their lives, especially when dealing with situations where they feel that they may be becoming sluggish, where they feel that they may be lacking, and they feel that they genuinely need a boost. And it is, understandable, the pressures that go on from not only yourself, but from those around you to perform at your peak potential and to be the best you can be. But it's insane to think that he was doing this at such an early age when he more than likely would not have even needed to be using them. But I digress. With that, I hope you did enjoy this discussion. This was my fan dilemma on one of my favorite goalkeepers, and a pretty much well-recognized, well-known, and pretty famous goalkeeper to this day, Guillermo Memo Ochoa, and a discussion on his career and the scandal that he faced in the early 2000s upon the identification that he was using steroids, and the overall impact that it had on his professional life and career, and how it ultimately impacted him in the manner that it did to position him in the place that he currently stands as still the goalkeeper for Club America. Thank you.